And you know what I'm going to say, and I've already told you that I don't care. I've already told you that I'm pulling for the crack in the earth to swallow both of these candidates. And so I'm pretty sure I told him that. But I get back later the response from the lawyer that basically threatens to sue me for my daughter's college fund. We can't do this, and we demand that you not do that. And and it's just ridiculous. The whole thing is so absurd. And so I don't know. It just pissed me off that they did it that way. And so that was the whole lawsuit part of the thing. And I just, so I wrote about that for Monday, and wrote about them threatening to sue us. And as it turned out, as soon as I wrote about it, several other media organizations come out and say, yeah, he threatened to sue us too. What the hell's going on here? Alrighty, welcome in. It is your favorite political podcast. It is Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon and
David Person.
How are you, Dave?
Well, it's a good day. I haven't gotten any threatening letters from attorneys yet, so I guess it's a good day.
The day is young. The day is young. Yeah. Well, listen, I wish I could say the same. But yes, it is a nice day out there. It's nice and hot. The humidity's going up, creeping up, baby. Getting it to where we need it to be. Pretty soon it'll be like the inside of an oven, and that's a joyous time of year. But before we get into what is an extremely full show, we will tell you about our friends over at Wind Creek Entertainment. They sponsor us, keep this thing going. We really appreciate them for what they do, and not just for us. We appreciate them for what they do for the state as well. They one of the state's largest hospitality employer. They are one of the largest employers in the state. And, we're creeping up on possibly being the largest. I know they've acquired another couple of companies not too long ago. And so, they employ a ton of folks around the state. You just don't realize all the businesses and things they're involved with, and how much, really. This is one thing that I've talked to them about in the past, and hopefully, as we do other things in the future at APR, these are things that we can talk about more, and that's the businesses that they assist. In like small businesses that they assist all around the state. They do a lot of work with people and helping their businesses and investing in their businesses, and it really is kind of remarkable. I've talked to a lot of people who have talked about how they just they had ideas, but they just couldn't get it off the ground, and they pitched it to the Porch Creeks, and the next thing they knew, the things just took off, and they had the capital to do these things that they had always dreamed of, and it paid off, and of course it makes them that makes them money as well. But it helps. This is how the world goes round. Okay. This is how the world goes round. But they are fantastic. The crown jewels for them are the three resort casinos that they operate in this state, in Montgomery, Atmore, and Wetumpka. Wetumpka and Atmore being the two largest. And I encourage you, as I always do, to stop by and see them at these places. You will not experience any finer hospitality and any finer service than what you're going to get there. The fine dining is fantastic inside of Fire. The restaurant that they operate inside the casino, it is really, really awesome. The spas are top shelf spas. The resort pools outside, they host a ton of concerts and events. Just go and see them. Look them up online at Wind Creek Entertainment. Go and book a stay, break up that beach trip, break up whatever trip you have. It is well worth your time.
It's
just
worth
trust
it.
us on that.
It's
It really is.
I still regret that I didn't get a chance to check out the spa for myself, because I'm very much in favor of a good massage and a good facial. I'm very much in favor of those things.
Yeah. Well, listen, those are good things to be in favor of. It's a pro massage stance is never a bad thing. Unless you're Robert Kraft. But it's, listen, you can,
Google it, folks. Google it. That'll explain everything.
I know Don doesn't get that reference, but that's okay. But all right, let's get into it. Because, there's so much. Which Republican that has been a bit litigious this week would you like to start with? I guess we probably need to start with Tommy Tuberville, right? And
we could start with Tuberville, or we could start with your buddy Barry Moore.
Yeah, yeah.
Be good
It
fun to
doesn't
bury
matter.
more.
Let's start with Tuberville, then we'll get to Barry. Fairly
All right.
quickly.
Okay.
So I mean, Tuberville's running for governor here, and honestly, I feel like he's probably getting the most attention right now, especially nationally, because of what's happening. And look, a week ago, a little more than a week ago, we're filming kind of early in the week this week, and but a week ago, he released tax returns. And, I said on this very podcast last week that those tax returns were problematic for the other side that's trying to argue that he has, not lived here, can't meet the residency requirements, because one of the things everybody's been clamoring for were tax returns. And I was like, well, look, he's plopped out 7 years worth of tax returns here. And there are some issues about, hey, this one right here looks like he might have illegally voted because he was claiming residency in Alabama and then voted in Florida afterwards. And then he also has some issues with the answers that he gave, because it looks like he might have committed campaign finance fraud to a certain degree because he was paying for vacation escapes and not Senate business or campaign business. But what nobody at that point knew you feel that? Was that they had left up in the corner of those tax returns a barcode, which if you fed it into a barcode scanner online, which you could go and download, anybody could do this, or give you another little tip. If you'd like for somebody to just read it for you and tell you what's in there, you can put it through Claude. And Claude will tell you these things. Now, I believe most of these things have been taken down, and we never published. I don't think we ever actually published the full tax returns that he had posted up there. So I believe most of them have at this point been taken offline because people realized that this was out there, and they, unlike his attorneys, they sought to protect his personal information.
Right.
And so, but it did contain all of the unredacted information from those tax returns. And, it revealed a handful of things that I think are going to be problematic. There was a huge discrepancies in the adjusted gross income between his state and federal reporting. And I think those things are let me just say, full, all this. I think that you're going to have more information to determine exactly what that means and why there was such a discrepancy in that. You're going to have his federal returns to see why he was reporting it in the way that he was. But those things showed some stuff.
Which direction was the discrepancy in? I mean,
there was very little money claimed in the state of Alabama. Matter of fact, one year, I believe the only income he reported was from residuals from the blind side. And so there was, and then on the federal side, there was much more money that year that was reported as his adjustable gross income. So what I have been told by some people is that it may be an indicator, maybe an indicator that he was filing that not as a resident of the state of Alabama, that it was filed here to report income here and report on his taxes here. And I'd also heard that might be because of his state retirement that he was trying to keep up.
One other question, and maybe this is, I don't want to digress much here at all, but so residuals for the blind side, how is that being counted as Alabama income? I mean, that's coming from somewhere else, right? Some Hollywood production company or studio?
Yeah, it is. And listen, I am certainly no accountant here, and so whatever answer I would try to give you is probably going to be wrong. So anyone should take that as the biggest caveat of anything that I'm about to say right here. Okay, whatever I'm about to say right here is probably wrong. All right, but I would guess that what was taking place there, assuming this is not just a straightforward, oh, here's my income and it's all I made this year, sort of thing, would be that this was a tax maneuver to report an income in the state of Alabama for some purpose. No, not anything illegal. I'm not suggesting that.
No,
but
I get
people
that.
do that
Yeah, I get
all
that.
the time. The accountants do different things, and he obviously had an accounting firm working on these things. And so whatever that was, I assume was part of that. If it wasn't just a straight up, hey, this is what I made. It's all I made that year. I was out of work and didn't get anything but this, these residuals from the blonde side. And so that again, I am no accountant and I have no idea what I'm talking about.
I get it.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
So,
but you've seen the documents and you've been, considering this. I think you haven't, even if you're wrong, it's a valid speculation.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, and I'll say, that it just what was really surprising to me after all this is that he put those tax returns out, and I think what that was supposed to do was to say to everybody, hey, you've been asking for this. Here they are. Now now you need to pick something else. Listen, you can nitpick this stuff about the voting and about the campaign finance stuff, but this stuff about the residency, here are the tax returns you've been looking for. Try to do something with that. And I think it was, like I said, it was going to be very, very hard for somebody, if those tax returns were legit, to kind of get around them. And somehow or another, they managed to do that and move backwards in terms of public view of where he lives, how I think how trustworthy the campaign is. I think this was a real blow for that Tuberville campaign. I think it I mean, look, the other thing about it is he made very little money in 18, 19, and 20, and then all of a sudden, after he becomes a U.S. Senator, boom, $1 million. Just like that. I mean, just like that. And I think it again kind of goes back to I think it tells people, hey, look, doing this stuff provides you with an advantage that you shouldn't have. And I just think the whole thing this week has been an unmitigated disaster for them.
Well, you're saying in ways though outside of the residency question is what you're saying.
I still think there's residency questions as well. I think that stuff with the income in there, it raised further questions about how legitimate the tax returns are and proving residency. I just think that all of it went completely backwards for them. From what they had hoped this was going to do, and realistically, what it should have done by putting these things out like that, in this particular context where they were with it, and not having to really answer any questions immediately. They should have gotten a solid 2 weeks of basically, well, looks like we're gonna have to deal with something other than Tuberville's residency, but they don't. They got no break. Matter of fact, it only got worse for them. And it just, it's such, and then the other thing is the trying to sue, threatening to sue Lagniappe, for publishing, those things, in which there was a threat made to Lagniappe over publishing it. And there's no leg to stand on in that. And it just makes you look ridiculous, and it just carries the story farther. I mean, that's another unforced error.
Well, I think from our perspective, I would agree with you, but I think the perspective that ultimately is going to matter here is the voting populace. And my fear is that for Tuberville's base, especially in this state, they're not really going to care about any of that stuff. That's my fear. I hope you're right. I hope it does make a difference. I hope it does give people pause, especially, swing voters and moderate Republicans to whatever extent they still exist in Alabama. But I am afraid that for the rest, the bulk of the Republican voting base, it is not going to matter.
Well, I'll say this. So, looking at it realistically, numbers wise, Doug Jones needs to pick up about 90,000 votes. Okay. Whatever combination that is people staying home. That is, new Democrats, registering and coming out to vote. That is Republicans switching over, independents switching over, whatever. He needs to pick up about 90,000 votes out of that. I think this moves that needle closer. And it doesn't. Now, I'm not saying it's a huge thing at all, and because I think ultimately you're right. Because look, Tommy Tuberville is a very, very polarizing figure. Okay, and so you have a base of people who are loyal to him, and you're probably not going to lose that base of people. I mean, he would have to do something that you and I would probably think is good, for him to lose some of the base of people. He would have to come out and say, I've been studying DEI and I think that's probably a good thing, this diversity. I think it might help us. I think he would probably lose some of the base. But otherwise, I think that what you're looking at are those hold your nose and vote folks, that swung things for Doug Jones during the Roy Moore campaign. I think you're in essentially the same situation. You have another flawed candidate. You have who has problems out the wazoo. He is very, very polarizing. Tommy Tuberville may be more polarizing than Roy Moore. He really may be. I think he's more. That doesn't listen. I think there's a difference now between polarizing and disliked. Okay, I think Roy Moore was more disliked, but I think Tommy Tuberville has been more politically polarizing than anybody. I don't know that there has been another candidate for governor in this state's history who has been as polarizing as Tommy Tuberville. I just think that the way he kind of conducts himself is in a you're either with me or against me, and he's been that way from the very start. And I don't know. Maybe they're closer to equal, but I just think that he's right there with him. In terms of that,
I think Roy Moore had two strikes against him. One, he was polarizing because of the whole 10 Commandments obsession that he had. And then two, the allegations that, as far as I'm concerned, were extremely credible, coming from grown women who said that when they were girls, he was sexually inappropriate with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he had a twofer going there that really maximized his negative polarity.
Yeah.
But again, I think when it comes to Tuberville, I hope you're right. I hope that that polarization that you're talking about exists to the degree that it will cause some people to really make another choice if he survives everything that he's going through right now in terms of the residency questions and all of that. I'm not as optimistic as you are that that's going to be the case. But let me just say one other. Let me say one other thing before you jump back in. I agree with you that Doug needs to kind of get this group of people, or these disparate groups of people to kind of coalesce around his candidacy. But I would also argue this. The other thing that I think Doug really needs to focus on is and I think the last estimate I heard our friend Anthony Daniels give, I think was that there are about 200,000 voters, eligible Democrats, in the Black Belt, I think, if I'm not mistaken, who have not been voting. And I think Doug needs to engage that group of people as well. I think, in fact, from my standpoint, that's the biggest challenge facing the Democratic Party. How do we get, and I'm saying we because I've been attached to the party and I vote, almost exclusively for Democrats. I mean, I think the challenge that we have is how do we engage those people who are eligible to vote to turn out and vote? And I think that's the challenge facing not just the Democratic Party, but Doug specifically as the person who's at the top of the ticket.
Yeah, I think that there needs to be a lot of effort put into exactly what you're talking about. And I think there has been some effort so far, but I think you're going to have to get some churches engaged. I think you're going to have to get some community coalitions engaged in things. You're going to have to get some people that connect with the community, and you're going to have to go down and visit a lot of those places. And I know he's been down there. I know he was down there, I believe, last week. That he and Ron Sparks and Philip Ensler were all there in the Black Belt, going from county to county, and that certainly helps. And telling people, look, this we're going to try to put forth a Democratic administration here that will help you in ways that you've never been helped before. It's going to address the problems that have never been addressed before, and try to get that energy back, and juxtapose it to what's been happening and what's currently happening with the administration, and what Tommy Tuberville has promised to bring them, which is absolutely nothing. He won't set foot in a Black Belt county unless the car breaks down somewhere on his way through. And that's. I think that's a thing that that they can lean into now. But yeah, and I don't want to. That is 100% true. That they've got to get Democrats who are dormant back out and voting, and get them out there. And get them moving, and understanding what their role can be into this, and hopefully they can do that. But I just on the Tuberville thing, I'm not telling you that this issue is now putting Doug Jones over the top, but I don't want anybody to walk away thinking that. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's closer. We all saw what happened with the voting. Doug Jones had more votes than Tommy Tuberville in Madison, Tuscaloosa, Jefferson, Montgomery, and Mobile counties. All right. Those are pretty big counties. Yeah, all good signs. Had some big numbers in Jefferson and Montgomery, and even in Mobile. Had big numbers there. It was a little closer in Madison, but still quite a change from where things were just a couple years ago. And so those are good signs of a move in the right direction. And this is, all I was saying about this is another knock. It's knocking off another shelf of voters for Tommy Tuberville. And I think the more shelves you can kind of keep knocking off there, the closer you move that number to that 90,000 or so that you're going to have to make up. And I think that's where that these sorts of things continue to build. And honestly, just the discouragement of Republican voters, I think a lot of Republicans right now are very weary. They're tired of what they're seeing from their president, that they voted for no more wars and releasing the Epstein files and lower costs for everything on day one, and all of these promises that have gone awry, except for he did stop the folks from eating the dogs. Nobody even talks about that. I mean, nobody's eating dogs.
Up in Ohio, the Haitians that were eating dogs in Ohio.
Yeah, they're not even eating the pets anymore because nobody talks about it. So I think they're weary of that, and I think they're seeing Tuberville, because he's so closely aligned himself with Trump, as kind of that sort of person. And the more of these, I don't want to call them scandals because it implies something else, but more of these problems, more of these negative news stories, things that you can't deny. You can't just say, "Oh, it's the mainstream media picking on Tommy." I mean, no. I mean, he released. The tax returns were the problem, and more mistakes and more things like that, I think just kind of weighs on them even more. And they're just like, oh my God, can you imagine this guy as governor? What are we going to be dealing with every day? And I think that makes a difference.
Let's keep our fingers crossed that you're right about that. My concern about that is that a lot of these people, I suspect, they're not reading APR. They're not listening to this podcast. They're not even reading, the very centrist Associated Press. they're reading Yellowhammer News or 1819, or they're looking at Fox News and Fox News websites. I mean, so the kind of information that AP is delivering, that APR is delivering, that AL.com is delivering, they're not getting that. So I don't know that they're going to be as affected as you hope they are. But I hope you're right. I hope some of them are. But that's my worry. That's my concern, because we're so siloed these days.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you mean by that, and you're right about the silos. I get so frustrated about what people do know and what they don't know sometimes, and I'm utterly amazed that they could know the password into Hunter Biden's laptop, but they don't know who their representative is. But I'll say this, and I've said this a bunch of times to people. What has been so really, really striking to me is every time you post, and I say you as in the royal you, but every time you post something having to do with Tommy Tuberville, negative, positive, doesn't matter, it gets a response on social media that is unnaturally large. I mean, anytime that I post, the other day I posted just a simple recap of just what has gone on with Tommy Tuberville over the last week, and kind of what it meant. And there was no jabs at Tommy Tuberville. There was no, it was not a, hey, Tommy Tuberville's a buffoon sort of a thing. It was just a, hey, this is what's happened with the guy, our senior senator, who's hoping to be our next governor, and here's what's going on. And I mean, and Facebook sent me a message to let me know that it was performing 200% better than some other posts. And I was like, you should do more of that, which I never pay any attention to that because I don't really care. But that's the way that it is. If you look, go into social media sometime and look at these posts about Tommy Tuberville and look how unnaturally large the response and engagement is with those things. And I bring that up just to say this. That's what drives news that gets to people. Now, okay, it used to be, hey, here's a top news story by these people at AP or at the Washington Post or at the New York Times, and hey, have you read this in the paper or whatever? Now it's this post has got a lot of engagement, so it starts showing up on everybody's feeds. Whether that's X or Facebook or whatever. This thing is getting a lot of attention, and so it starts to land on more and more people's feeds, and that's the way things start to spread now. So I have a suspicion that a lot of these things are landing in front of a lot of people that they wouldn't ordinarily land in front of. And so there's a lot more engagement with some of this stuff than there ordinarily would be. And I think that the more that occurs, the more problematic it is for Tommy Tuberville, because I just think that it's.
I truly hope you're right.
And I don't look. Again, this is an uphill climb for Doug Jones. Okay, this is an uphill climb for Philip Ensler. It's an uphill climb for Ron Sparks. For everybody on the Democratic ticket, except for in certain areas, it's an uphill climb for them. All right, and so it's going to take more fumbles from the other side. It's going to take a lot of effort in getting out the vote. It's going to take a lot of great messaging and things going on from the Democrats to climb that hill and get over the top of it. And that's assuming Tommy Tuberville remains the guy at the top of the ticket.
Right.
And we'll talk to Kyle Whitmire a little bit about that in a few minutes. But, I think that every bit of it is kind of another knock. Democrats have some momentum right now. We'll see if they can kind of carry it through. Real quickly before we have to slide out and get Kyle in, let's get to Barry Moore. Because I don't think we'll have time later. Barry Moore his campaign threatened to sue me this week, and threatened to sue a lot of people, apparently. Threatened to sue AL.com, threatened to sue, or I don't know if he threatened to sue AL.com or not, but he threatened to sue the Coleman Times. He threatened to sue 1819. He threatened to sue, they threatened to sue pretty much everybody. And they were threatening to sue them over the allegations. They're not even allegations, more just like questions. Questions about his military service record. And I'll be honest, what got me involved in this was I got some information emailed to me. And the Barrymore people were like, well, it probably came from Jared Hudson's people. And I'm like, well, no fucking shit. You think? No, I mean, yeah, of course it came from Jared Hudson's people. Who else is out there knocking on Barrymore? I mean, come on. Yeah, of course it did. But that doesn't necessarily affect the truth of it. Okay. And so what I got was a packet full of information that questioned Barrymore's service record and him continuing to call himself a veteran and put veteran in everything that he does and talk about combat boots and all that stuff. But what really caught my attention was a letter that was included in that, in which Barrymore had signed on to this letter written by Brian Mast, who is a dipshit Republican representative from the state of Florida, who was questioning the service record of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz while he was running to be vice president with Kamala Harris. And they were questioning him over his use of a rank. He called himself, he retired as this. Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole story was he had achieved the rank, but before he had retired because of a lack of service or something like that, he didn't maintain the rank. And so he didn't necessarily retire at that rank. Okay. He had served 24 damn years. Okay. 24 years he had served. And so, but they were quite, it's an insult to military people everywhere. Well, signing on to that letter was one Barrymore, who signed that letter as a retired staff sergeant from the National Guard. And if you look up Barry's record, he did not retire as a staff sergeant from the National Guard. As a matter of fact, he attained that little rank by attending officer training school, which he never completed. And so he retired at not staff sergeant. And so when I called, I emailed first his people and said, hey, look, I've got this information and I have some questions and I want to know this and this and this. And one of the things that I wanted to know was, Barry has used the rank of staff sergeant and claimed it. Is that not the same thing that he was accusing Tim Walz of doing? And the other thing that I asked about was whether or not he considered himself a veteran, because someone had asked him if he considered himself a veteran at a campaign stop that he had. And he fumbled the question like they had asked him, was he still beating his wife? And so they guys sends me some answers back. And one of those answers is Barry has never claimed staff sergeant. He's never claimed that. And so I sent the guy a message and said, hey, here's this letter that they sent to Tim Walz where he clearly has signed this. And so we get on the phone and go back and forth a little bit about, and it's a very, very cordial. When I say back and forth, I don't mean we're arguing or anything else. The guy that was with him, the guy that was his spokesperson, was very cordial, very professional. We had a nice conversation. Some of it was off the record and I won't get into that. But part of it was, hey, look, we don't really know what happened with that, but this is not something Barry's claimed. They probably just looked up his status in retirement and saw it was, that he had achieved the E6 level. And so they assumed he was a staff sergeant and they just put it on the letter and he did, name was just on there. That's a perfectly reasonable response. Okay.
It is.
It's a perfectly reasonable response to that. Okay.
Sure.
And I was prepared to say that. So I said, but he asked me to ask that question in an email so they could give it to the attorneys. He also asked me to ask the question about whether or not Barry is a veteran and why he responded in such a way to those people. And so I put those in a follow-up email and sent it to him. I get back a response later, said, hey, I'm not sure we can get this to you. This is Thursday. I'm not sure we can get this to you by tonight. Could you hold off? And I said, I cannot hold off. I cannot hold off. I don't know if y'all can hear the dogs barking in the back, but I have dogs.
Yeah, I heard it.
So it's it's life. They're protecting his house. He's about 5 pounds. But
let's protect this house.
That's right. That's right. So far he's batting 1,000. Nobody has broke in here. So I was like, no, I can't, man, because I need to publish something because we don't publish on the weekends. So it's either published tomorrow or I got to hold this until Monday. By which time, who the hell even knows if it's a story anymore? You know what I mean? It's and so I want to publish and say what you're saying here, and you know what I'm going to say, and I've already told you that I don't care. I've already told you that I'm pulling for the crack in the earth to swallow both of these candidates, and so I'm pretty sure I told him that. But it's. I get back later the response from the lawyer that basically threatens to sue me for my daughter's college fund. And we can't do this, and we demand that you not do that. And and it's just ridiculous. The whole thing is so absurd. And so I don't know. It just pissed me off that they did it that way. And so that was the whole lawsuit part of the thing. And I just, so I wrote about that for Monday, and wrote about them threatening to sue us. And as it turned out, as soon as I wrote about it, several other media organizations come out and say, yeah, he threatened to sue us too. What the hell's going on here? And I'll say it was a very stupid response to this. They should have explained what's going on. They should have done exactly what they've been doing, provided explanations for what some of these questions. The thing about it, is he a veteran? I know in military circles there are some very fine definitions. There are very specific definitions that they sometimes use for certain labels that get put on people. And I just think that if you went in, you volunteered, you signed up, you went through the training, you satisfied everything everybody asked you to do, you were honorably discharged, I'll call you a veteran, and I don't have any problem with that. And that's what I told the guy, and that's what I wrote in the column, even after they did this dumb shit with the lawyer. I feel like Barry Moore's perfectly within his rights to call himself a veteran. And I don't, did Jared Hudson do more stuff? I guess. Okay. But I always thought that you put other qualifiers on it. I always thought you put combat veteran, war veteran, retired Navy SEAL. I always thought that was the difference that you put on there. Not this guy can't be a veteran because he didn't get called into a war somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, I think anybody who's served is a veteran. Once they're out of service, they're a veteran, whether they were deployed overseas or saw combat or not. My father was in the Army band.
Yeah.
He never saw combat, but he was a veteran.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, there's a joke from, with Bill Burr that talks about everybody talking about all the folks in the military are heroes. And he was like, yeah, the guy that's in the fighter jet, not knocking folks down. Okay. He's a hero. But the guy that goes like that on the runway, is he a hero as well? But yeah. To me, you get the credit, man. You signed up. Yeah. They gave you a job. Yeah. You did the job. You were honorably discharged. I didn't sign up, Yeah. So, to me, it's just a level of respect. And I have respect for Barry Moore doing that. I don't have a lot of respect for him threatening to sue me, but I have respect for them doing that. Now, there's a whole other conversation we could have, which we don't have time for now, about whether or not we should be leaning so heavily into this veteran thing at all. And I have some real problems with that, honestly. But, it's...
Oh, the politicization of military service? Yeah. Well, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. So, all right, let's slide out. We'll get Kyle Whitmire in here, talk a little bit more about lawsuits and fumbles and all the other stuff, and maybe we can talk about Pulitzers. I hear we have one. So, all right, we're back in a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment.